Hello and welcome to Vault Holocron. I'm Jonathan and today we will be discussing the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation were that group introduced in the Phantom Menace who were led by Nute Gunray and formed a blockade around Naboo. They have appeared in a lot of Star Wars media since then and will even be in the upcoming Star Wars game, Star Wars Eclipse. But just who were the Trade Federation? Today, I intend to answer that question. To start, I'm going to explain the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation was an interstellar shipping and trade conglomerate, which was founded in 350 BBY, which is 50 years before the High Republic era. The Trade Federation was such a powerful company that it even had representatives in the Senate. It was particularly successful in the Outer Rim territories, which did cause a power struggle between them and the Republic. The Trade Federation would also often force planets into signing contracts, giving them the ability to blockade planets and control systems. Like how they tried to force Naboo into signing a treaty which would give the Federation great control in the Phantom Menace. There were many roles in the Trade Federation, with the Viceroy, the leader of the Federation, being the greatest. The Federation also had financial officers who worked on finance, diplomats who managed international relations, senators who were politicians which worked in the Senate, envoys who were representatives of the Federation, advisors who advised leaders like the Viceroy, captains and officers. I'd also like to briefly mention that within the Federation there was the Trade Federation Armaments Committee, which dealt with the company's armed forces. Now I'm going to give a brief history of the Trade Federation. To start, I'm going to go over the creation of the Trade Federation. Before the Federation was founded, the Galactic Republic introduced 3 trade zones around the outer areas of the galaxy. These zones were areas where trading went untaxed, intended to increase the flow of travellers and the buying and selling of goods in these areas. This plan worked, but had the side effect of pirates and plunderers targeting the zones. Because of the lawless nature of the Outer Rim, this made these areas dangerous, so in response a bunch of commercial, financial, manufacturing and shipping companies came together to protect themselves. This group of businesses then became the huge conglomerate, the Trade Federation. Over time, the Trade Federation grew more and more powerful and respected, earning their seat in the Galactic Senate. The Federation then gained so much power in the Senate that they could make their own law around the trade routes. With this, the Federation charged high-end protection fees to travellers, basically making the free trade zones free only for the mega corporations linked with the Trade Federation. Due to the Trade Federation's control, there was a power struggle between the Federation and the Republic, which lasted decades. To help with this, a summit was held on the planet Eriadu, but everything went downhill. During this summit, the radical political group, the Nebula Front, entered in attempts to assassinate the then Chancellor Finis Valorum, and the leader of the Trade Federation. The group did this due to their hatred for vast corporate conglomerates. In the encounter, Valorum survived, but the leader of the Trade Federation died. This led to none other than Nute Gunray taking the leader's place, and becoming the Viceroy of the Trade Federation. With his rule, Gunray hired new people to lead the Federation, choosing people who shared his anti-republic ideas. With the Neimoidian leadership, the Federation reached the pinnacle of its wealth, willing to do anything to increase profits. Later, Darth Sidious got in touch with the Federation, offering to work together, which they did. Also, as an interesting fact, Palpatine didn't just get lucky having Nute Gunray as the leader of the Trade Federation, as it turns out that he'd actually manipulated events to get Gunray into the Viceroy position, which Sidious needed him in. During Gunray's run as leader, a huge law came into play called Prop 31 814D. This was brought in by Chancellor Valorum and would mean that free trade zones could be taxed. For obvious reasons, the Trade Federation hated this, as previously they'd been using the benefits of free trade to make huge profit. Despite their great power, the Senate still voted the law in, and this caused backlash from the Trade Federation. This response was to blockade Naboo, and try to force them to sign a treaty which would basically hand the planet over to the Trade Federation, which we saw in The Phantom Menace. As we saw in the movie, this plan failed. Also, I'd once again like to add that this event was also Palpatine's doing, as it was the thing which got him into power, going from Naboo Senator to Chancellor. Due to the failure on Naboo, Gunray was put on trial, but he evaded punishment. Also, some members of the Trade Federation suggested that they get rid of their droid army to try to please the Republic, who was angry with their actions. This didn't happen though, with Gunray just moving the Federation's operations to wealthy Neimoidian colony planets called Purse Worlds. This meant that the Republic couldn't watch the Federation's actions so closely. The Federation also lost their monopoly over shipping in the Outer Rim, with companies such as Eriadu Mining and Shipping now making profits. In the time leading up to the events of Attack of the Clones, the Trade Federation was making battle droids in factories on Geonosis for the Separatists under Count Dooku. The Federation later pledged their allegiance to Dooku and the Confederacy of Independent Systems in Attack of the Clones, offering support in providing military forces. Their deal with the Separatists didn't mean that they lost their seat in the Senate though, as the rest of the Federation publicly distanced themselves from Gunray, calling him an extremist. The Federation also publicly took a neutral stance in the conflict, despite supporting the Separatists, and still being led by Gunray. The Trade Federation were also active in the Clone Wars, although they still publicly retained a neutral stance. For example, the Trade Federation Senator, Lot Dodd, took part in negotiations on Toydaria, in attempts to persuade Toydaria not to get involved with Republic supplies. He did this all while making sure not to show that the Federation was in support of the Separatists. Later in the Clone Wars, the Trade Federation got involved in a massive issue. They blockaded the moon Pantora under the claim that they hadn't paid their debts. This was part of a scheme with the Confederacy of Independent Systems to try to get Pantora to join the Separatists. For this plan, the Separatists also kidnapped the chairman Papanoida's daughters, sending one to Tatooine and the other to the Trade Federation ship blockading Pantora. While the Trade Federation was holding Chi Ikwe on their ship, Ahsoka and Ryo Chuchi devised a plan to search the Trade Federation ship, and this soon led to the discovery of Chairman Papanoida's daughter. This puts the Trade Federation in hot water once again, but they managed to get out of it through Lot Dodd telling the Republic that the guy responsible, Sib Kane, was an extremist inspired by Nute Gunray. After this, at the end of the Clone Wars, the Trade Federation also ended, due to the introduction of the Empire. First, Nute Gunray was killed on Mustafar, along with the Separatist Council. Then the company was nationalised, meaning that the Empire took it over and ran its operations. The accounts were then plundered by the Empire. So yeah, that wraps up the story of the Trade Federation, which lasted for over 300 years. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you know more about the Trade Federation now. Feel free to subscribe if you really liked the video, and we hope to see you later at Volt Holocron.